Welcome back to Infinity Learning and welcome back to part 3 of the sales process, the buying process. Now in the previous two videos, I broke down the mnemonic for the buying process. The mnemonic stands for idea, I, D, E and A. If you remember, if you've seen the first two videos, or if you haven't seen the first two videos, the I stands for interest. So we spoke about it's not enough for someone just to have interest in your product or service. As the person who potentially is having a conversation with the client, it is your responsibility to elevate their level of interest. We then spoke about the D, section 2, the D, which is desire. Interest alone, a lot of the time, is not going to get somebody to actually part with their potential budget and buy your product or service. There needs to be some sort of element of desire that is created for your product or your service. So again, just like elevating levels of interest, you need to elevate levels of desire. We spoke about a few ways and techniques in which you can actually do that, or you should be doing that in the previous video. We also spoke about the evaluation. In this video, I want to continue speaking about the evaluation process, and then also the last stage in the buying process, the action. Now, the evaluation is extremely important. This is where the customer, either the potential customer or you, introduce price, how much it's going to cost. Either the client, prospective client, asks that question, or you introduce that question. You want to find out how much budget they have and if there's going to be any conflicts. So this is where we are now in the evaluation stage. This stage is absolutely critical. One of the reasons it's so critical is in the first phase, interest phase, that can be either logical or emotional, okay, depending on the person that you're speaking to. The desire stage is purely emotional. The evaluation stage is purely logical. So, as a sales professional, one thing which is critically important for a sales professional when you are speaking to a potential customer, it is the questions that you ask them when you're finding out information, the conversation that you're having, that your questions are not just logical based questions. Your questions have to be a mixture of logical based questions and emotional based questions to cater for the different sides of the brain that you want to stimulate and your customer is stimulating by whatever the subject matter is. For example, and again, this all stemmed from the workshop I did a couple of weeks ago, where I was engaged by a company to do a sales refresher workshop for their sales force. And approximately half the workshop were new to sales. They had worked for the company for X number of years, and they had transitioned into sales. When I say transition into sales, I mean not necessarily that they were doing another role and then they were plucked and now they were going to do sales. There was one or two of them that found themselves into that situation. A few of them were inbound customer services, and what the company wanted to do now was to be more proactive. So you had a customer service representative who was hired as a customer service representative, and now what they wanted to do is for that person to create opportunities to be able to offer the prospective customer or the customer more opportunities to buy their product or their service. So a natural transition, because customer service and sales, it's the same thing. Years ago, as we know, the two used to be separate. But in the 21st century, it's the same thing. If you are front-facing customer service, you're also looking for, you should be looking for opportunities to proactively help your customer deliver a much higher quality service, and on the back of that, as a byproduct of that, you will sell more product or service. The two are intrinsically linked. The hardest thing is for people to actually see that and not see customer service, sales, two separate roles. Now I've got to amalgamate them. They've always been one, although historically we've never looked at them as being one. We've divided them. Customer service, only inbound, answer queries, that's it. Sales, external. Okay, but in 21st century, the two are intrinsically linked. So the workshop in which I did, we were looking at the buying process. So if somebody calls in, a customer calls in, and they have a question, query, complaint, whatever the situation is, you're going to answer that, you're going to deliver a higher level of service, and you're going to take that opportunity to maximize the opportunity that you have the customer to speak about their wants and their needs for the short term, medium and long term, if the conversation permits, and you're going to take them through this process. So those were in the first two videos, part 1 and part 2. What I want to focus on today is the evaluation stage. So we've got to the stage now where the customer is saying, how much does that cost? It's more than my budget. Okay, so I like the sound of what you're saying and it makes perfect sense. However, my budget is only X big. Okay, so a lot of the times you may encounter a conversation like that. Now, that is not a bad thing. Okay, the customer is not saying to you, I don't want to buy. The customer is saying to you, I want to buy, and I want all that you have expressed to me. I need all that you've expressed to me, but I only have this amount of money to pay for it. Okay, so they're not turning you away. There is opportunity there. So what are the things that we can do to get the client on board? Well, it's relatively straightforward. The buying signals that they are giving to you, there are like, light bulbs going off all over the place. I want to buy. I am ready to buy. As far as I'm concerned, as the customer, the only sticking point I see is for your service or your product, you want X and I have Y. So that's the only sticking point. So dependent on the conversation, dependent on what you can and what you can't do. So there are different scenarios here, absolutely different scenarios. And I wish I had time to go through every single scenario, but we clearly don't. So I'm just going to choose a couple of scenarios. There are obviously many more scenarios, but I'm only going to choose a couple. So let's go with the first one is, Paul, I like everything that you've said to me. I can't understand why we haven't done this previously, why we didn't see this. I like it. The only problem I can see from my perspective is I don't have the budget for absolutely everything. Okay, so the client is now placing the ball firmly in my court. Okay, firmly in my court. Now, I'm going to give you what I personally would do. Paul from Infinity Learning, what Paul would do. It may not be what you would do, and that's okay. Okay, we all adjust scenarios to fit what's best for the client and what's best for us. Remember, the number one rule, okay, that I teach whenever I do a workshop, I always teach the number one rule as far as I'm concerned is when you are speaking to a client, you or a prospective client in this particular example, you want to start laying the groundwork for trust. It doesn't happen overnight. Trust builds up over a period of time. And you want to be looking at, and what I'm about to say, I say this on my workshop, but I create the environment so I can say this. And the response I'm looking for is humor, not a stoic face. So I'm going to deliver the line to you. I'm not saying you have to use this line, okay? You might not have the personality to pull this line off. Plus, you've got to lay the groundwork for this line, okay? This line goes with my character. My character is cheeky, risque, whatever word you want to use, that's my character. But I'm always thinking of what's best for my client. Whatever is best for my client, it's kind of going to be best for me. I put myself in second place. And the reason I do that, it's the right thing to do. And I say to my clients, and it's going to sound cheesy, it's going to sound corny, I know, and they tell me it is, but they laugh when I deliver the line. And the line is that I don't want a one-night stand. I want a relationship. But I kind of deliver it and I say, I don't want a one-night stand. I want a relationship. And we both have a laugh about it. They say, I can't believe you just said that. But they get exactly what I mean, okay? Because I'm looking to try and establish, and it's not going to happen overnight, okay? But I want to start building the foundation of trust, okay? That if I say I'm going to do something, you can take that to the bank. It's going to get done. You don't have to remind me. If I say I'm going to do it, it's going to get done. That doesn't happen overnight with clients. That takes time. So we want to break down. So I'm going to say, okay, what elements of what we have discussed, okay, are a must for you. So now I'm batting the ball back to the client. I want the client to say to me, well, the first part, I absolutely need that. Second part, I really want all of it, but if I have to prioritize, okay, short term, medium, and long term, okay. So short term, without a shadow of a doubt. Okay, I can put that fire out. Medium term is the next logical thing because it is just the next logical thing. So those two, definitely. I know I need the third. However, I can't afford the third at this present moment in time. So first thing we spoke about, which is the short term, medium term, which was the second thing we talked about, those two. Okay, that will give me a lot of breathing room. Okay, so that's what I can afford. Okay, so now I've got the customer to tell me specifically what they can do. Okay, they need this and they need this. Okay, now I'm only speaking for me personally, Paul, at Infinity Learning. Okay, so this is me. I'm not saying it's a blueprint that you have to do this. This is just me. The client tells me this, it will be, okay, I totally hear and understand you. When will be the next time your budget will be replenished? So that's the first question I'm going to ask. I'm not going to assume anything with regards to the client's budget. I want to introduce the discussion about their budget. When is the next time they are going to have more budget? I want that conversation now to go around their budget. Do they have facilities for an emergency budget? Would they categorize stage 3, the long term, as an emergency? Could they tap into that if they do? So I want them to tell me about their budget process. Okay, is there a contingency? Is there an emergency contingency? If there is, what do they consider an emergency? Would stage 3 of our discussion, the long term, would that constitute as an emergency? It might not constitute as an emergency. However, we're having that conversation with regards to money. Now, a lot of people find it difficult to speak about money. It's like money is the last taboo subject. It isn't. It's a fact of life. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It is what it is. We need money to do things. So it's a conversation that I personally don't shy away from, and nor should you. There is no reason to shy away from that, but it's the way in which you do it. So let's say, for argument's sake, that the client says to me, okay, the budget, we have our annual budget, it's once a year. We're now in, what are we now in? August. Okay, so it will be February, will be the next time we'll be having our budget. Okay, can you see where I'm going with this? Because phase 1 or stage 1 of what we were talking to the client about is they're putting out the fire now. So the first quarter, that's what we've been discussing, that's going to take care of the first quarter. They've got breathing room. However, very, very quickly, okay, the medium term, they can see the problems on the horizon, or before the horizon. And they have already said, what we need, the problems that we're going to have, once we deal with the short term, the medium term, the solutions that you are offering for the short term, good as they are for the short term, they're fantastic, but they're not going to cut it for the medium term. But I like the solutions you put forward for the medium term. Those are their 2 priorities, right there and right then. Okay, so my conversation would be, and let's just, instead of saying the client, it sounds really impersonal, I would just say, Sandra, for example. Okay, so your priorities, quarter 1, okay, quarter 2. So although it would be really nice to have quarter 3 right at this present moment in time, and we wrap everything up and we put a bow across it, that's not realistic at this present moment in time. The reason I say that is that these 2 quarters we need to evaluate. We are assuming, and I'm on the same page as you, that we're going to hit the ground running. However, we need to factor in evaluation. We need to there's going to be an X factor that we don't see. A curveball is perhaps going to come from somewhere. Okay, so although on paper what we've been discussing addresses the needs on paper, the reality might be something different. So my suggestion, okay, is, or my recommendation is, let's go with option 1 and option 2. Let's factor in measurements of these, okay? Because we don't know, how do we evaluate, okay? Your KPIs, can they pick up what success actually looks like? I know monetary-wise, it might be able to pick it up because you may be able to sell more, etc., etc., etc. But what about the the human factor, the developmental needs of your staff? Will your key performance indicators pick those up? So that might open up another conversation. Actually, I didn't think of that. Okay, so now let's focus our attention on really tying down and making these two areas bulletproof. Okay, we have plenty of time because now we're in August. What is going to happen? It's going to take us 3 months, and now we're going to be, 4 months, and it's going to be December. Okay, well, your budget review is going to be February. So really, we're in stage 1. Okay, so now January, February, we're moved into stage 2. Now, if you have been successful with your budget proposal, we're now in February. So stage 3, you will have the budget, or you may have the budget for stage 3. You don't have to commit to stage 3 now, okay? But commit to stage 1 and stage 2. So now we start looking at a more longer term, and I'm starting to build another layer of trust where I'm saying, okay, let's put that to one side. You need it, and you're going to get it. We're going to ensure you're going to get it. But let's make sure if we don't do stage 1 and stage 2 correctly, okay, we're going to compound your problems into stage 3. You don't need that. So let's make sure we get stage 1 and stage 2 correct. So I am exceeding your expectations because I'm now coming up with suggestions that perhaps you hadn't thought of. Because remember, your customer is in the here and now. Okay, they're only thinking about, if they have key performance indicators, it's going to measure the hard things, revenue. Okay, so how much money is coming in, how much money is going out. If we're talking sales, we're talking about if you're being proactive, how many calls have you made to how many sales you've actually made. Okay, whether that's inbound or that's outbound. Okay, so they're looking at those hard measurements of those. But now what we're talking about are soft measurements, which usually KPIs don't pick up the soft measurements. Okay, and the soft measurements are as important as the hard measurements from a different perspective. So now let's now look at, the soft things. How confident are your salespeople when they're talking? Are they meeting the needs of your customer? Can we measure what is being said? Can we benchmark it so that all of your salespeople are saying the same thing? So factually, information is 100% correct. Is there a disparity in between information that one salesperson or customer service person gives to another customer service representative? If I'm the customer and I call and I speak to person A and they tell me X, and I call back and I speak to person B and I repeat exactly the same thing, do they tell me, do they give me the Y answer? Why aren't the two not the same? So we want to ensure that all of those things are tied down as much as we possibly can in those first 2 quarters. Now, me personally, and again, I'm not saying that you have to do this, but me personally, I would ensure that I design something that I'm going to give to that customer, because the level of service that I provide is a high quality service. So I'm going to design something for that customer. It's free of charge, it's part and parcel, that is going to help them to measure those areas that we've just introduced. It's not going to cost them anything. So again, what I'm doing is laying the foundation of trust, because now I'm saying to you, these are going to be the problems. I'm extremely experienced. I'm very good. I'm very good at what I do. So I know you're going to have these problems. Okay. So if you do have these problems, I know you're going to have these problems. Rather than be reactive, Let's be proactive. I'm going to make you proactive. I'm going to train, if necessary, your supervisors in these measurement mechanisms so they can incorporate those measurement mechanisms in their daily duties. They're not going to have to come up with those measurement mechanisms. I'm going to do it for you. It's going to be free of charge because I'm looking at the bigger picture. I'm looking now at Q1 next year for the budget for stage 3. Okay, so I'm playing the long game, not the short game. So I have to work, and I don't look at how much my workload is, because work is work. Whether my workload is up here, or whether my workload is here, it's still work. So I'm looking at building a relationship, a long-standing relationship with my client. I'm looking for my client to trust me, that when I say I'm going to do something, I've got your best interest at heart. I'm going to be looking beyond what you say to me that you need, because I've done this for a few years, so I know what potentially is going to happen, particularly if you don't have measurements that don't measure soft skills. As you start to sell more, okay, your level of service may not be consistent all the way through your customer service teams. Okay, it might not be level all the way through. It will be level all the way through with regards to key performance indicators, because they're the hard measurements. But you might have one customer service representative who sounds so much more enthusiastic, so much more positive, it's so much more engaging. And you've got another customer service representative who, although technically has exactly the same knowledge, but they don't sound as enthusiastic, they don't sound as engaging. And when you hear them on the phone as a customer, you just want to run in the opposite direction. So measurements like that's going to help address those particular imbalances. That's what I'm going to give you. So when the customer is evaluating the complete level of service that they're going to be getting from me, it's not just the short term. I'm wanting them to look at the short term, medium term, and long term. I want them to see rapid progress in the areas that they need, but also in the areas that they didn't think that they need, that hadn't even occurred to them. Okay, so that's personally what I would do. So the budget issue, it isn't an issue as far as I'm concerned. It is not even a challenge. It is a long-term strategy. The client is saying to you that I don't have the budget in this fiscal year, but maybe the next fiscal year I do. So we then modulate what we've been talking about, and we give them short term, medium term, because that's going to take a period of time to bed in. There are going to be some teething problems which we have to anticipate and correct, and there's going to be measurement mechanisms that they need but they don't currently have. We're going to give them that. Okay, when they see that they're getting all of that and they see the progress, okay, when it comes round to February next year and they do get their budget, it's kind of a no-brainer that stage 3, which they also needed but they couldn't afford at that time, now it's a different conversation. Now I need this. I've got the money for this. Let's do this. I've seen what you've done in stage 1 and stage 2. So let's do this. So that takes me on to the action stage. And the action stage, the A of idea, now is let's take action. So the action is that we're going to do this. Okay, so I really like this. So from my perspective, what I would say to the customer, because now we're moving really, really fast, but I want to put the brakes on very, very slowly. I want the customer to feel completely in control. So it will be, okay, let me now, before we do anything, Okay, before we do anything, you need to see what I'm going to be training. Okay, so let me construct not only the subject matters, but let me give you the outline, a good look and feel of what I'm going to be, how I'm going to be training your staff. Okay, so now the reason I'm going to do that is because that material eventually is going to be yours. So you need to have input into that material. There's things you want me to include, I'm going to do that. So at each step of the way, I am building, cementing that level of trust. We're not going to go ahead until you are 100% happy with what you see. I promised you the soft skills mechanism. So before we go ahead with running the course, I'm going to actually show it to you. I'm going to send it to you via email so you can physically see it. So now the level of trust, okay, has gone up slightly. Remember, this is a marathon, it is not a sprint. So from my perspective, the action, although the client has given me the green light, I'm still holding the reins because I want the clients to feel in control of their process. I don't want them to feel that, things are moving quicker than I anticipated, because they can do. I want them to feel in control. I want them to feel, okay, we've done this, now this material is ours. Paul is giving it to us. Okay, now some of you might say, well, hold on a minute, Paul, then repeat business. Okay, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. And in the short term, perhaps I could be from a particular perspective. I don't look at it that way. I look at it as a marathon. So I'm now giving you the material and I'm saying, that's now yours. You don't need to hire me again to internally do this. Okay, you don't need me to do that. If you want me to do that, I'm more than happy to do that. But this is now yours. This is now something that you can do, because and I'm thinking long term, they might not always have the budget for that. Remember, I don't want a one night stand. I want a relationship, as corny as that sounds, but it is what it is. So I'm giving you that. So you are in control all the way through the process. Okay? So that is the buying process: interest, desire, evaluation, and action. Now, thanks very much for watching. If you like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. For those of you who have not subscribed to me, if you like the video and you would like to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing to Infinity Learning on YouTube. If you'd like to receive notifications when I make a new video, then tap that bell. That way you'll be notified as soon as I upload a video, you'll be notified. Please write your comments down below. If there is a subject matter that you would like me to speak about with regards to learning and development, soft skill wise, then please put your ideas and suggestions down in the bottom. If you'd like to contact Infinity Learning, my contact details are in the bottom as well. If you'd like to hire me to come in and do a workshop for your organization, a seminar, training course, whatever, all of my contact details are are located down below. Follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, and Twitter. And thanks very much for watching this video. I look forward to speaking to you on the next video.